So you want the cancer to stop growing. Is that true? Are you sure? Have you stopped to think about it? Look again. You may come up with the same answer, and I'm inviting you. You want the cancer to stop growing. Yeah. Is that true? Are you sure? Sit with it. Yes. So, you want the cancer to stop growing. We're looking at stressful reactions here. How do you react when you believe the thought, I want the cancer to stop growing?
Hello, Bezel 333 here. Byron Kathleen Reed, now known as Byron Katie, was a run-of-the-mill housewife who grew up in the desert truck stop town of Barstow, California. She suffered from a deep depression and finally admitted herself into a residential treatment home for women with eating disorders in Los Angeles. Here's how she tells her story in her own words.
In your life? I was 43 when this experience happened to me, and I had been suffering just deep depression, suicidal even. Well, actually, as I lay asleep on the floor one morning, actually a cockroach crawled over my foot. But the thing that is really important that I realized is that when I believed my thoughts, I suffered. But when I question my thoughts, I don't suffer.
Now, it was at that moment that the 4 questions, which are the foundation of her work, as she calls it, came into her awareness. These 4 questions to whatever problem thought you might be thinking are as follows. Is it true? 2, is it absolutely true? 3, how do you react when you believe that it's true? And 4, what would you be without the thought? And then there is this turnaround where you take the thought and you flip it. So from, for instance, my wife doesn't love me, comes, I don't love my wife. It's basically a kind of cognitive behavioral therapy with Hinduistic, Advaita, in other words, monistic, non-dualistic underpinnings. Now, this Hindu Advaita philosophical foundation is perhaps not so easy to spot as one reads her more recent books, such as 1,000 Names for Joy, Loving What Is, and Tiger, Tiger, Is It True? But if you go back to the years right after Byron's awakening, around 1998, you will find this little book, no longer in print, entitled Losing the Moon, Byron Katie Dialogues on Non-Duality, Truth, and Other Illusions. Now, the title alone should tell you what the work is really all about. Here's an example of the book's content. Byron is responding to an account of a Nazi survivor who witnessed Jewish babies being taken from their mothers and thrown into a fire. She writes, war is what is, it's nature. It's what is sometimes. It's not personal. If someone, she puts in parentheses, God, or what is, pulls my baby from me, if that's what it takes, I'm there. Take the baby. Tear the baby from me. Throw it in the fire. She goes on, the baby is me. You see, there are no choices. What is. When you know that, it's over. And it's beyond full acceptance. It is love itself. The love of God. There is nothing terrible. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm convinced it's never okay to throw a baby anywhere, let alone a fire. And it's this kind of thinking that's at the root of Byron Katie's The Work. Now, the question was asked of Katie's husband and collaborator, Stephen Mitchell, as to why the book is no longer published and why you won't find it on Byron Katie's website. And he wrote this. I understand why people love this book, but we discontinued publication because Katie's answers were just for the occasion, which was a specialized gathering of Advaita, non-duality Hindu people. Katie's answers are always like a ball being thrown against a wall. The angle of incidence equals the angle of reflection. Whatever that means. English translation, it was too extreme and too radically Hindu for their target market. Now, Byron writes this in her book about the value of engaging the work, no matter what else you happen to believe.
These 4 questions will join any program you've got and enhance it. Any religion you have, they'll enhance it.
Now, I want to argue that the work is not at all compatible with Christianity. Here are a few examples to make my case.
When we question our thoughts, we don't suffer. When we believe our thoughts, we do.
The stressful ones.
The stressful ones.
Because the ones like, I really care about you. Isn't this a wonderful world? I love seeing you. All these thoughts. I love my children. Those thoughts are working for us. And who cares if they're true or not? They're working for us. If you're in a wonderful dream, do you want someone to wake you up? No.
question. Is the work a sweet dream or actually a beautiful nightmare disguised as a sweet dream? See, the Bible does care if something is true or false. Paul writes in Philippians 4, "Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, think about such things." In other words, what is true matters a lot.
And I saw that the mind wasn't true. And I saw that people believed their thoughts, but it simply wasn't true for me. That doesn't mean that it's not true for them.
Okay, that's pure relativism and points to the fact that in Byron's world, truth has no value whatsoever.
How do you define suffering?
On sadness, resentment, anger.
Now, that's a pretty weak definition of suffering. How about things like disease, physical pain, torture, false imprisonment, being the object of slander, poverty, hunger? These things are real whether you believe your thoughts about them or not. And the Bible doesn't deny suffering, and yet it has an answer to it. Jesus said in John 16, "In this world you will have suffering, you will have tribulation, but take courage. I have overcome the world."
To see death, and it never happened. It was all in my mind. And because I don't mind death, I see death as a wonderful thing. I see life as a wonderful thing. You question what you believe, and it's, my mother died. And it's a celebration.
Now, in distinction to Byron Katie's idea of death, the Bible teaches that death is real, and it's horrible. It is the unnatural separation of a person's body and soul. Just look at the reaction of Jesus when dealing with the death of his friend Lazarus. When he came, he found that the body had already been dead for 4 days. And Jesus saw people weeping. And Jesus himself was deeply moved in spirit and was troubled. And Jesus wept. Jesus wept at the enemy of death, even though he knew he was going to bring Lazarus back to life. We read further, he cried out with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come forth!" And the man who had died came forth, bound hand and foot with wrappings. His face was wrapped around with a cloth, and Jesus said to them, "Unbind him and let him go."
Now, why is it a better thing that my mother died? She no longer suffers.
You see, according to Christianity, the end of this life is not the end of you. Your personal soul lives on and will be resurrected to your body on the last day. Some to everlasting life and some to eternal destruction. It all depends on who you have placed your trust in.
Oh, that's our birthright as a human being, freedom.
Now again, that's not what Christianity teaches. The Bible teaches that we come into this world having inherited Adam's guilt because of his rebellion against God. We come into this world under the just judgment of God as a member of Adam's fallen race. Our only birthright is as a child of God's wrath. Is that fact compatible with Byron's work?
Do you believe that some people deserve punishment for the things that they do?
Absolutely not. Oh my goodness. You know, no one would harm another human being if they were not confused.
But the Bible says that the wages of sin is death. That's the condemnation of the law, and it will condemn anyone who does not perfectly conform to all the law's demands. But the gospel of Jesus Christ offers life. Remember, Jesus said to Martha right before he raised Lazarus, he says, "I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live even if he dies, and everyone who lives and believes in me will never die." Do you believe this, Martha? So the statement that
any religion you have, they'll enhance it,
cannot be true. Now, the choice is yours. You can put your trust in the work and deny the reality of sin and guilt and death, or put your trust into someone else who has dealt with sin and its horrible effects on your behalf 2,000 years ago, 20 minutes walk outside the city of Jerusalem.
Don't do it again. And that way is self-realization, God-realization, and the work is the way to wake up.
And you're saying that self-realization, not lived, doesn't mean a thing. It's just a bunch of goo-goo gaga stuff.
Yeah, exactly.